Cis people, please. There is more of us. Just because you met one non-binary person doesn't mean you know all non-binary people. Let's start there. Also, feel free to ask our pronouns. It's not scary. We actually are too scared to tell you, so help us help you. What else? Questions aren't bad. If you need to educate yourself, you don't need to speak to us in a way as if like we don't know about ourselves. We know more about ourselves than the internet can tell you. So speak to us. Also, we're very capable of loving. We're not something to be scared of. It can be confusing, but you don't have to disregard it just because it's confusing for you. Just because, like all humans, we're not perfect. So do not categorize a person in the spectrum out of hate. And I don't know whether you're going into a feud, whether you're fighting with anyone of any type of, gender, but don't use their gender as a reason. Because then you're putting so much, negative views to a whole, cataclysm. Is that a big word? Big group of people. And also, please look with a lot of love. There are a lot of people that are really trying to navigate it, and it's really hard to do alone. It's really, really difficult to do alone because they probably even haven't got to a place where they feel as confident yet. So if you notice things, don't shit on the person because of it. Open it up. Ask them about it. Make them feel comfortable with you as well. So that's my tea.
Yeah, going off of what you said at the beginning about how there's so many more non-binary people than people think, I just want to emphasize that there are so many more trans people
Zoom in
than you think that there are. So many more.
Seriously.
It's crazy.
Especially if you live in a city, you see trans people around all the time and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I had this professor once who told me that he could always tell when somebody's trans because of certain differences in bone structure, and then he pointed out my small feet and I was like, thanks.
Wow.
But that's not true. Even if he is able to sometimes notice when somebody's trans, there are many people who pass as cis who he does not know are trans, and there are also many people that pass as the gender that they're not, that he also doesn't know are trans just by seeing them,
Also, what's
So-
he doing with his time? Just sitting there, trying to figure shit out, relax, it's okay.
Trans whisperer. I can't. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I love the light professor call out.
You may be able to spot some of us, but you cannot spot all of us.
Agree.
But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
That whole mindset is the issue is that you think that everyone's gonna fit into some specific box or category.
Yeah.
You might identify it as something and as a visual representation not look anything like what that's meant to be, and you can't figure it out based on looks. For me as a person, I do care about how people react to me and how they think of me, so sometimes I do try and adhere to things. Sometimes I don't, but sometimes I do try and adhere to things that are more of a external, superficial way of understanding maybe gender. But some people don't, and you're not going to be able to look at them and categorize anyone in a specific label. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You're a cis person, but you may have so many trans or just non-cis people in your life, or children, or friends, or things like that, and if you don't know how to navigate that conversation, you either lose someone in your life that you care about because you hurt them and they don't want to stay, or you temporarily or long term really damage someone's self view if you really can't formulate some things in a in like a loving or accepting way. Like it is something that I feel like should be like a part of like sex education when things are coming in, so that children can learn. Because if you're a kid and you don't have the language, like where do you go from there? And like how do you like accept yourself in a way early on, so it doesn't get to a point when you're having to like get through all of this stuff just to accept, you know what I mean? Like having to go backwards and be like, no, I'm unlearning this and I'm unlearning this just so that you can exist as yourself. Like gender is like a really big part of our everyday lives in terms of how we're treated, how like we're expected to act or dress, or the jobs or the pay we get. Everything shouldn't be, but it is. So like I don't understand how they aren't having conversations about this. I guess people don't always get sex education in general, but
passing for me and for like a lot of other trans people that I know is not about like is not always about looking the way that they necessarily want to look. It's much more about being perceived as the gender they identify as. So it's not for the trans person, it's for all of the cis people who are seeing that trans person.
Right.
So the idea of passing, the idea of like trying to look cis, it's not for trans people, it's for cis people, so that they can read us, so that they can understand us, when that maybe isn't an accurate representation of like genuine expression. You know?
Seriously.
But it's like it gives them certain cues to like know how to treat us.
It's like, it's honestly, I mean, like when you're thinking about a cis audience watching this, like gender as a construct, whatever, is literally detrimental to everyone. Like cis men have the highest rate of like suicide in general. So you have to think about how like, or at least in England, sorry, but like you have to think about how that probably comes from a place of like feeling like a lack of ability to express emotion, because many men, like people who are brought up as men, like deciding gender or not, are taught like feeling is unacceptable and crying is unacceptable, and that's just like in pop culture, in like the what, like every avenue of life. So like gender and the way that it's brought up around people is really like confining. You have to be like half of a person. You have to be like emotional or like logical, and
it's policed in really unhealthy ways.
It's policed in like, okay, you have your outfits, which is one thing, which is just like, okay, what if like you have a cis guy who wants to like wear a fucking dress and makeup, like what does that mean? This person can still like totally be cis, it's fine. And there's that like avenue which is large and also small, but then you have like ideas of what you can do with your life, like so few like women in like things like engineering, which is like, that doesn't make sense. Like maybe it's a boring job for some people, maybe it like all of these like weird categorizations in like every single avenue of life. And if people are going to be really against like trans people, you're closing off a whole avenue of like self-acceptance for yourself. Like you are then saying people can't be more than like half of themselves. I mean, that's how I see it, and that doesn't have to be how other people see it, but I don't see how anyone could be exactly what like a man is meant to be, or exactly what a woman is meant to be. Like we all have so many compartments of ourselves and complexities and like things we've been brought up with, but things we feel, and there's like a part of like being trans or being non-binary that opens that up even if you're not, for everyone. And so like accepting and like learning about those things can be a self like promoting journey, and one that accepts other people. This doesn't have to be like for someone else as well. Like you can learn about gender and deconstruct gender even if you're cis to help yourself.
So I was like throwing hearts at the camera. The camera crew over there. Shout out to Cobb.
Thanks, Cobby.
Seriously. And he's asleep.
Aww, what a sweetie. I love that he's just like, this is where I want to be.
Let's talk. Honestly.
That's great. If you are in a different part of the country or the world, I would love for you to sit down with some trans friends of yours and talk about gender, talk about what it is about being trans that you think about a lot, what impacts you, and be part of this conversation together, because it's healing to talk about these things.